Councillors, if you're ready, I'm going to commence. On behalf of the Glenelg Shire Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional lands and waters of the Gunditjmara, the Jali Jali and the Bowen Dick people and their respective cultural heritages. I acknowledge the elders past and present here at today's gathering and through them to all Aboriginal people. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people provide an important contribution to Australia's cultural heritage and identity. We respectfully acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community living throughout the Glenelg Shire and the contribution that they make to the Glenelg Shire's prosperity and well-being. To those present in the gallery today, by attending the public meeting of Council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Council meetings may be live streamed and the Chief Executive Officer will enable a copy of the recordings to the public. Tonight, councillors, we receive apologies from the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Craig Neiman, and the Director of Infrastructure, Mr Stuart Husband, and the Executive Manager of Governance, Mr Brett Jackson. Thank you, councillors. We have confirmation of the minutes on 5.1 on tonight's agenda. Councillor Robert McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday, June 25, 2024, as circulated, be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Carr. Any commentary, Councillor Robin?
No, thank you.
No. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Robert McDonald and second by Councillor Carr. Those in favour? Carried. We'll move on to 5.2, record of councillor briefings. There are a number of briefings there, councillors. Is somebody prepared to move those notes? Councillor Carr.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council receives the record of councillor briefings held on 25th of June 24, 4th of July 24, 9th of July 24 and the 16th of July 24.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Seconder, Councillor Robin McDonald. Second. Any comments, Councillor Carr?
No comments.
No. If not, moved by Councillor Carr, second by Councillor Robert McDonald. Those in favour? Carried. Item number 6, declarations of conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts tonight, Councillor? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Item 9.5, Planning Scheme Review 2023, as it references my employer.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillors, I also have a conflict in 9.6, which is the Community Funding and Support Policy as President of the Caston Kelpie Association, which is an iconic event mentioned within the policy. Any further, councillors? If not, we shall move on. Thank you. Councillors, we have the activity reports there. Councillor Robert McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the volunteer event in Nelson, which was a very large contingent, a huge amount of volunteers keeping that community going. After the volunteer recognition, there was also a lot of Q&A going on, so it became a sort of a multi-purpose event, but very productive discussions. The other event that I'd like to talk about is the Winter Solstice event, which has become a really popular event initiated by the Committee for Portland. It's an event where new people that have moved to the town are invited by members of the community that they become aware of. They invite them to this event. It's a fabulous opportunity for them to network within the community, and the responses from those people this year was that they couldn't believe the overwhelming generosity and hospitality that occurred, and already I've seen people networking and a new business that has been flourishing already in the town from their attendance that night.
Thank you, Councillor Robert McDonald. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, got up to Casterton for the round 7 and 8 of the Vic Off-Road Championship motocross, and it was just amazing. There was thousands of people in Casterton, volunteer run event, 400 odd riders, and the feedback from the riders was that it's the best event of the series. And congratulations to the Casterton Sport and Motorcycle Club and their volunteer committee. They do a really good job. On another note, I went to the Portland District Health's Men's Health and Wellbeing Breakfast up at the Golf Club. Look, we've got to do more in this space. We've had too many men in particular do themselves harm within our region over the past 24 months. On a positive note though, I did get to hear from Bodie Turner, who was an Olympian, BMX level, and you know, no matter how tough things are, you can always seek help and turn things around and live a good life. So I was going to touch on the Kelpie muster, but I'll let you touch on that, Madam Mayor.
No, you can. I'll give you the privilege of discussing that. Thank you. You can discuss it.
I missed it. I went to the Kelpie muster with the family. Got to help out with the parade there, judging for the parade. Look, I've been the last 4 years now, and I believe this year's crowd was the biggest by far. The weather was absolutely amazing. Although the farmers would have liked it to have rained, I'm sure the participants at this event were happy that it wasn't raining. There was dogs everywhere. The volunteerism that goes on in the casting community is second to none. The Casterton and Kelpie Association, look, and I know I've probably got that wrong, your name, but the volunteer group, the volunteers within the community, just do an amazing job, and it's a fantastic event. And I encourage anyone who hasn't been, or if you haven't been for a few years, to lock it away in the calendar for next year, because it's a free event and it's just an amazing atmosphere to be part of.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'll pass those comments on to the members. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I've spent every service club has had an AGM this month, as you would expect them to, and they've all changed over. It's been a privilege to attend a number of those service club changeover dinners and just reflect on what they've done. The Victorian Off-Road Championships, as Councillor Carr has said, it's amazing the quality of the events and the willingness for volunteers to step up. And this is the Victorian Off-Road event, and I mean they had over 400 riders there that particular weekend, which is just astounding that it's out in the middle of nowhere in the scrub, and the facilities are second to none. And if you're talking to the overarching body that comes from Melbourne, you know, the CEO of that particular organisation said, you know, this is one of the best run events that we attend in the whole of Victoria. So congratulations to them. Of course, I did a number of significant birthdays and wedding anniversaries, which is always a great thrill to see those people as well. And our listening post in Hayward, and then of course, councillors, I attended the Australian Local Government Assembly in Canberra as well. So that was really an excellent few days up there, linking in with other like-minded people. So thank you to all councillors that attend functions across our shire and continue to give of their time to our community groups. So I thank you very much. Councillors, we'll move on. There are no notices of motion for this evening's paper. We'll move on to our management reports in number 9. Yes, sorry.
There's a recommendation there to receive the activities reports.
I always miss that bit. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I'll move it, if that's all right.
Second it.
So I'll move the recommendation that council notes the councillor activity reports for the period of 8th of June to the 5th of July 2024 in its entirety.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr and Councillor Alistair McDonald. Sorry about that, councillors. I always miss that. I'll turn the page. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hall. We'll move on to number 9 now, management reports. 9.1, delegations update, July 2024. Mr Hall, would you like to give an overview?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is a twice-yearly process of reviewing Council's delegations, direct from Council to the CEO and Council to staff, and a number of other instruments that are listed there. It's certainly to make sure that Council staff have the necessary delegations in place for the undertaking of their duties.
Thank you, Mr Hall. Councillor Wilson?
Oh, sorry, well, got a bit early.
No, that's all right.
I was going to move the officer recommendations.
I'll just ask if there's any questions first. Any questions, councillors? If not, Councillor Wilson's moving the recommendation in its entirety.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, did you have any
Thank you,
comment?
Madam Mayor. As we've heard, that this is a statutory process that occurs twice a year. The process is quite straightforward, and a lot of legal requirements require these delegations to be put up at this time and to be voted on. So a great read if you want to put yourself to sleep. Yeah, it's
Thank you,
it's a
Councillor
step,
Wilson.
mate.
Thank you. Councillor Alistair?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
No
No
comment?
comments, no.
That's- That's fine. It's been moved in its entirety as tabled on page 13 and 14 by Councillor Wilson, and second by Councillor Alistair McDonald. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 9.2, councillors, the lease agreement between Portland District Health and the Glenelg Shire. Mr Hall again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors may recall 12 months ago a lease was undertaken to Portland District Health, as Portland District Health taking on a home support program. There was a reduced lease in place. The PDH were not in a position to extend any further, so a new lease has been created for the next 12 months and provided for council support.
Thank you, Mr Hall. Any questions on this item? Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Mr Hall, will there be any impact over users of the building?
Through the Mayor, so thank you, Councillor Carr. So the impact will be exactly the same as been over the past 12 months. There is some shared spaces that's as part of this lease, so there will be no change from the previous lease expiring.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a recommendation, councillors, tabled on page 16. Councillor Robin McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council approves a new 12-month lease with Portland District Health for the Fourth Rock Community Centre, Hood Street, Portland. 2 sets the rental figure at $37,812.50, including GST, for 12 months from the 1st of October 2024 to the 30th of September 2025. 3, authorises the Director of Corporate Services to finalise and sign all documents relating to the proposed lease.
Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Carr.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Robin, do you have any comments to make?
They seem to be operating perfectly from that venue, and without affecting any of the other users. So, no, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Just that this is a good outcome for council, Madam Mayor, to receive some revenue from a council asset that doesn't have a particular use for anything else is a great outcome for the budget.
Thank you. Agreed.
Finances, sorry.
The recommendation is tabled on page 16 has been moved by Councillor Robin McDonald and second by Councillor Carr. Those in favour? Carried. We'll move on to 9.3, councillors, the Audit and Risk Committee minutes for the 6th of June 2024. Mr Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The purpose of this report is a number of aspects. Provides a copy of the minutes, and there is a confidential section as well for council's information from the meeting that was held on the 6th of June. It's a requirement of the Act to table the minutes at the next available council meeting. There's also 2 recommendations there from the Audit and Risk Committee. One is to adopt the Strategic Internal Audit Program for the next 3 years, and also to adopt the draft annual work plan, which also was considered by the Audit and Risk Committee at its June meeting.
Thank you, Mr Hall. Councillors, any questions on this item? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr Hull, obviously with the big cyber issue going around in the world at the moment, what has Council actually done? What processes are in place for Council to actually mitigate any of those risks? And what do we do ongoing to make sure with phishing emails or any cyber security stuff at Council, which is obviously important with people's information?
Through the Chair, so there is an extensive amount. I might defer to Ms Kirkham, my Chief Information Officer, might be able to elaborate in more detail.
Yeah, thank you through the Chair. Yes, we have training programs for phishing for staff. We have endpoint security systems, and we have our firewalls, amongst other things. So it's a continual, ongoing process, and we try and stay up to date with latest initiatives.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, there's a recommendation on page 18 in tonight's agenda. Councillor Northcote, are you moving that in its entirety, Councillor Northcote?
Yes, certainly, Madam Mayor. That the Council receives the minutes of the Audit and Risk Meeting held on the 6th of June 2024, adopts a draft strategic internal audit program July 2024 to June 2027, and 3, adopts the draft annual work plan for the year ending 30th of June 2025.
Thank you, Councillor Northcote. Is there a seconder? Councillor Martin.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you. Councillor Northcote, would you like to make any comments?
It's out of my depth, a lot of this, Madam Mayor, but just this cyber security concerns me a lot, and there must be an inordinate amount of checking and rechecking and covering the problems that can pop up. And I don't know where no one knows where it's going to end, let alone someone like me. But it's a pretty scary prospect. I mean, someone's only got to flick the button and the whole shebang could grind to a halt. And I'm not talking about the Shire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Northcote. Yes, it is. It's a worrying time. Councillor Martin, did you have
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it just goes to show, if anyone does look at the agenda here, Council's more than just roads, rates and rubbish. We have a lot of requirements, statutory requirements that we've got to comply with, but also looking after people's data. So obviously a lot of these penetration tests, cyber security stuff, and there's a whole other raft of OH&S issues that we got to make sure we do cover. And there requires oversight for all that to occur, to make sure we are doing it, we are compliant, and that is what the Audit and Risk Committee is all about. So it is a very important function of this council, the fact that we do a lot more than people realise.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillors, it's been moved by Councillor Northcote and seconded by Councillor Martin. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, we'll move on to 9.4, the response to the Notice of Motion Renewable Energy from May 2024. Ms Miller, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is in response to the Notice of Motion from May 2024, and also attached is the Situation Report. As the report outlines, there's an unprecedented number of projects in the pipeline in the Portland area. This includes offshore wind, onshore wind, hydrogen, retail, manufacturing, infrastructure and early years. The Shire has some key strengths and advantages to respond to these developments, but there are challenges that exist and they need to be considered as the local economy diversifies and grows. Going back a step, in May 2024, Council officers met with Wanted Water, who presented an idea that we could come together to better understand the impact of the pipeline of these projects on the community. And in response, we're recommending a cumulative impact tool that will support integrated growth and development and better understand the effect of growth in the local area. An approach like this also increases capacity for advocacy, community engagement, change management and collaboration across business and industry. So as outlined in the recommendation and report, rather than commence new work, we recommend that we collaborate where appropriate and progress the cumulative impact project, currently referred to informally as the Future Portland Project. And there are a list of stakeholders in the situation report that would need to be consulted with as part of this work. Regarding the funding aspect of the motion, the Portland Diversification Fund has been identified as an opportunity, and we need to do some work on scoping to define costs. It would need to be market tested, governance would need to be established, and of course the project should be subject to successful funding application. We would be expected to put a funding co-contribution towards this, which we can draw from existing operational budgets. And most likely need to auspice that project as well. I think, Madam Mayor, I'll pass back to the councillors for comments and questions regarding that report.
Thanks, Ms Miller. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Miller, on the officer's recommendation, part 3, it says authorises a chief executive officer to negotiate the water contract. For anyone reading that and read through all that information, I'd like you maybe to sort of outline why that's there, and is there actually a project we're going to do right now, or what's the case there?
Yes, through the Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Martin. That is a good question, and it would be unclear if you read it. It's assurance during caretaker. So if we can progress that project during the caretaker period, the CEO can authorise to move forward without having to come back to council.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It mentions a dashboard within all the information, and I know it's a bit of a Dorothy Dixon, but would you be able to explain to people at home or in the audience here what the dashboard's all about and what's the aim of it?
Yeah, so again, not fully scoped, but the idea would be it would be a responsive piece of work rather than a document that ages from the day you print it. You know, you're constantly having to update reports. So this would be more responsive and look at the impact on existing infrastructure, transport, housing, childcare, all of those knock-on effects that would occur from the volume of growth and development in the community.
So if we come out with a project comes out in the public interest, like the battery one down at South Portland there, in theory would they be able to plug that into this dashboard and it actually spit out what requirements of council and water, other interested parties? Is that?
That level of detail I probably can't give you this evening,
yep.
But the idea would have a broad look at what would be the impact. You know, supply chains would be another impact that business would have to consider as well. So it would be quite nuanced, but we haven't worked through that level of detail. I think tonight we need the mandate from the council to move forward, so we can progress that work.
Yeah, thank you, Ms Miller. Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Would the plan be for council to lead this work?
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Carr. Yes, at this stage, we have got a strong collaboration with One Water at this point in time. So when we work through the governance on the project, we can come back to the council with more information on that as well.
Any further questions, councillors? If not, there's a recommendation there on page 21.
I'm happy to move.
I'll second it.
Councillor Carr?
I'd like to move the recommendation that 1, receives the situation report, renewable energy in the Glenelg Shire Council, July 2023. 2, progresses further work.
24.
24. Thank you.
Just keep me on your toes, that's all.
Progresses further work in partnership with key stakeholders in the region on the new Future Portland project. And 3, authorises the CEO to negotiate an award contract.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Seconder, Councillor Martin.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, this report, given the short time frame that staff got put this together, is absolutely fantastic. It's in our council plan to enable economic growth within our shire. We need jobs for our communities. Every job equals one house. And as a council, we need to have that view of what jobs may happen. Then we need to grow and expand our residential zones, water, power, sewer, services, schools, everything else in our community needs to grow with it. When you look at this list, you look at these projects, they are, nearly all of them are above 50 full-time equivalent employees, and they have 20, 30-year prospects. We are going to have a massive growth period within our in our shire, and this council can't afford to delay or be the blocker for that to occur. We need to be strategic. These things, hopefully they do occur, need to occur in the right place, and we need to have a strategy to enable it to happen. So I do thank the staff for the report. I thank you for bringing the motion to council, and I hope that we can obtain the funding and put a plan in place to enable this to occur for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think point 2 of the recommendation, which is progress further work in partnership with key stakeholders in the region on the future Portland project. That's what this is all about. So this is building on this report here. As Councillor Carr said, there's a whole plethora of situations where with housing and sewerage and schools and infrastructure and roads, we need to know what's going forward. So there are no blockers. This council obviously wants to progress further jobs in the region and progress these projects, and this is another step to making sure that happens, Madam Mayor. So it's very important.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillors, I might just take a moment to make some comment, if you don't mind. Thank you to Ms Miller and to the CEO, Craig Neiman, for putting this report together in such a timely manner. Look, I can see that, we all know that unless we plan for these things, then they don't happen in a strategic and well thought out manner. So really it's so incumbent on this council to make sure that we're listening to what's happening and have the vision to plan for what the future holds. There are many shires around the Victoria and across Australia that would absolutely value the opportunities that are coming Glenelg's way. We are in a period of growth, and this is what we need to be. This is our responsible management of our shire, and we work hand in hand with the key stakeholders. But this will be a regional project. We will lead it, but it will be a regional project. We will see growth across our shire and all of our neighbouring shires, including over in South Australia. But unless we start to plan for this, it's coming for us, but we need to have a very clear vision on what that may look like. So I thank the management for their due diligence in putting this report together, and look forward to the next phase. Thank you, councillors. The motion on the table tonight on page 21 has been moved by Councillor Carr and seconded by Councillor Martin. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 9.5, which is the Glenelg Scheme Planning Scheme Review Implementation. Thank you, Councillor Carr.
Thank you.
Councillor Carr has declared a conflict of interest and is required to leave the chamber. Councillors, there's a recommendation there on page 25. Oh, sorry. Miss Miller, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a brief introduction, and then I've got next to me our Manager of Planning and Development, Mr Berry, who can respond to any technical or legislative questions relating to this item. Council is the planning authority for the Glenelg Planning Scheme, and we have to review the scheme every 4 years under the Planning and Environment Act. The 2024 review and update of the scheme is sought to implement recommendations from the review in May 2023 and some overall general administrative updates. There was formal exhibition from the 9th of May to the 11th of June 2024. We had newspaper notices, and the complete amendment package was available online in our customer service centres as well. One submission was received from DECA, and within the report the officers have outlined a response to the items raised in that submission. So I think, passing over to the councillors now, we can respond to any questions.
Thank you, Ms Miller. Councillors, do you have any questions in relation to the planning scheme review item?
Just one question, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Robin?
Could you just confirm for me, Mr Berry, that it doesn't change any of the maps or zoning areas?
Mr Berry.
So thank you, Madam Mayor, through the Mayor, that the planning scheme amendment does not change any of the zonings as part of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr Berry, Obviously, this came through council last year, I believe, from memory. What were the headline dot points for this planning, just to give people an overview of what this is actually about?
Thank you, Councillor Martin. And through the Mayor, the key, probably three key things from this planning scheme amendment. So firstly, it's to modernise and update the scheme, so with the relevant council plan, ABS statistics and some corrections. The other key thing is it's going to reduce planning permits for particularly sheds in the rural living zone and farming zones across the Shire. At present, there's a 100-metre setback trigger for waterways. In collaboration with the Glenelg Catchment Management Authority, we've had that reduced in this to 30 metres, so that means sheds can be sited a lot closer without triggering planning permits, so that will help reduce red tape. And then the final thing at the end is it outlines the strategic work plan in the planning space, looking forward over the next 3 years until the next planning scheme review. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Berry. Councillor Martin.
Madam Mayor, did the plan need to be updated for any strategies that the council did, like the open space strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor
Mr.
Martin.
Berry.
Yeah, through the Mayor. The open space strategy is now referenced in the planning scheme as a result of this amendment.
Yes, thank you.
I've answered your question.
Any further questions from other councillors? If not, there's a recommendation tabled on page 25. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the recommendation dot point 1, 2, 3 and 4 on page 25.
Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Allister. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, council put this through last year, went out for public consultation. We did receive some feedback from DECA, which was being implemented, and now we're actually setting this off to the Minister. So the next step of the process. Obviously, we've just covered a few things that the plan review did cover. Obviously, is removing some red tape for some farmers, which is always a fantastic thing to be able to do. And also update references for traditional owner names as well. I think that was something that was required to do in the plan as well. So I look forward to sending it off to the Minister and completing that process.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Allister McDonald.
No.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. The recommendation as tabled on page 25 has been moved by Councillor Martin and seconded by Councillor Allister McDonald. Those in favour? Carried. Councillor Martin. No. Councillor Wilson's. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, I've declared a conflict in the next item, being 9.6 Community Funding and Support Policy. Could I have a recommendation for an acting chair, please? Councillor Martin.
Oh, I was going to nominate Councillor Wilson, if that's okay.
Okay, Councillor Wilson's been nominated as seconder. Councillor Carr has second. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Did you want to remain where you are?
Oh, I'll remain here. That shouldn't take too much time. Thank you, councillors. 9.6, the Community Funding and Support Policy. Our Director, Jane Miller, the Director of Community Service, will introduce the item. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wilson. I am pleased to present the final draft of the policy. During the consultation period, 5 public responses were received, and councillors and employees also had an opportunity to provide feedback. The changes adopted in response to the feedback are outlined in the body of the report, so I won't go through them one by one through this verbal update. Overall, there's been little change to the intent of the policy. The work has really been to clarify and make transparent the process and funding opportunities that were already in place with council, and refresh the policy to make it more contemporary and fit for purpose. It'll always be subject to further review after it's tested in the community. So we've put it out there and we'll do a review within a couple of years to see how it's working. Details on the various funding programs are available through the supporting guidelines. It is important that the policy is adopted tonight because we will launch round 1 of our 24-25 community grants tomorrow, and we'd like to close that process out by caretakers so the community have their funds in plenty of time. Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Ms Miller. I'm sure we should be able to reach that decision. Councillors, any questions?
No one's going to ask a question.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Good on you, Dorothy.
Ms Miller, just noting some of the feedback that we did receive, one of them I actually was quite in favour of, and I won't read the whole thing, it's a little bit lengthy, but there was an emphasis should be placed on beneficial outcomes rather than who's applying for the funding or narrowing the guidelines for projects that they must fit in. What would be needed for council to be able to look at doing that and changing its perspective, perhaps in the future, at a future council, to sort of fit within that feedback there?
Through the Chair, thank you, Councillor Martin. There's a couple of things going on there. Obviously, the guidelines have been reviewed in light of this anticipated policy being adopted. So we've tightened in that regard and aligned it to the council plan and strategic objectives. The second part would be we've launched the Ageing Well grant guidelines with the new budget. So that's an opportunity to broaden the scope within the community to deliver some outcomes, particularly for our ageing population as well.
Thank you. Mr Chair, I'm glad you mentioned the Ageing Well. The reason I asked that question or this particular view is I just had a discussion or a meeting with Kat Bailey from the Neighbourhood House, and she provided some feedback that because they receive funding from other avenues, very limited funding, they struggled to do projects that would benefit the community. So they were looking at one right now where it'd be a bus driven through the community for disadvantaged people, which would create engagement, but they weren't able to do, they're not able to do that. So how would this Ageing Well community grants be, how would they be able to use that?
Yes, and through the Chair, thank you, Councillor Martin. The Ageing Well grants, actually, the idea came about from discussions with Neighbourhood House in the beginning. They did approach myself to talk about how could they progress programs and activities in the community. They're restricted from the community grant program because they do receive some small amount of state government funding, but through the Ageing Well program, we're looking to broaden the scope. I don't have the details on the guidelines with me at the moment, which would enable agencies like that to deliver some programs and services and partner with council for the betterment of the community.
If I may, just one further question.
Yes, you're on a roll, Councillor.
I'm on a roll, keep going. The Ageing Well community grants, that's something that's brand new. So where is that, a bit of a Dorothy Dixon, but where does that come from and why do we now have it?
Through the Chair, thank you, Councillor Martin. Obviously, we exited the Asian Disability Services in September 2023, and we were looking to provide an opportunity to deliver some programs and services. So this is a really good start to doing so. So we put forward a budget submission for $50,000 to start a grant fund up. So that's sort of where the ideas come from, along with conversations in the community with people like Kat Bailey.
So we really committed to actually looking after the community after exiting that program.
Correct.
Done?
Oh,
Good, done. Any other questions, councillors? No other questions. The officer's recommendation is in the report. We'd like a move by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Carr.
I'll move the recommendation in its entirety, Councillor.
Thank you.
Happy to second.
Councillor Carr, second. Councillor Martin, please take the floor.
Thank you, Mr Chair. As I did mention before, I wanted to sort of highlight two of the feedbacks that sort of, I guess, resonated with me or had some significance. And one was how we go about looking at grants. And I think that's something that this council or a future council needs to look at in the future, and a different way of thinking about it as well. The other one was an interesting piece, and I don't think we're going to tackle it here tonight. And I'll just find the actual feedback. Sorry, councillors, page 4. What they actually mentioned was organisations that are able to apply for grants that derive some income from gambling. And I know that hasn't been discussed or may not be discussed tonight, but it may be something that this council should think about in the future. and where that sits with us and whether that's in keeping with what we actually this is about. So again, I won't touch that on tonight because this is an important piece. It's great that council is able to provide community grants back to the community every 6 months, $80,000, and it's something I know this council group does enjoy doing. So that's why I support this policy in its entirety, and hopefully look forward to how we can maybe tweak it in the future to make it even better.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Wilson. I think for me, and I'm really excited by the grants program, and it's a great thing that this council does. And what I like about what we're able to review, and hopefully councillors agree to tonight, is what it does is it improves our transparency. What you can apply for, what the matrix is, how it will be applied. That transparency has actually flowed into our meetings, where we now, as part of the agenda, it's an attachment. Who applied for what, how are they assessed, and what the recommendation is. And it's exactly what we need to do as a council. We need to provide clear guidance, transparency around the decisions, and this puts the framework around that. So I'm happy to support it, and I hope all the other councillors do too.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Anyone against? Any other councillor wish to make a comment? No comments. So, I'd just like to say that this policy is one of the frequent flyer policies that this council has. We've been tweaking it over many years, very often, to try and make sure that this document does what it's intended to do, and that is to give grassroots some grant money to assist in the community. And as Councillor Carr has stated, that it is more clearer and transparent for everyone to see how this council administers the grant money. The motion has been moved by Councillor Martin, seconded by Councillor Carr. Those in favour? Those against? It's carried. Matt?
We'll move on, thank you, councillors, to 9.7, Councillors' Quarterly Expenditure Report. There's a recommendation on page 31. Councillor Robin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council receives the Councillors' Quarterly Expenditure Report for the period 1st of April 2024 to the 30th of June 2024.
Thank you.
Second.
Councillor Wilson. Second. Any questions, comments? If not, moved by Councillor Robert McDonald, second by Councillor Wilson. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 9.8, the Portland Foreshore Community Pavilion. Ms Miller. Thank you, Ms Miller.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to welcome to the Chambers Mr Doherty, who is Council's Manager for Environment and Facilities, and he'll also assist the councillors tonight if they have any technical questions regarding this project. Director of Infrastructure, Mr Husband, and our CEO, and apologies. So it's fallen with me tonight to present this report. Before the Council, there are 5 recommendations to outline an orderly approach to pausing the current trajectory of the Foreshore project to enable a review of 2 alternative sites. Of late, new information has come to light regarding a site adjacent to the TS Henty. Following a desktop assessment, it has been identified by DECA as a possible site for the project. Also, in recent discussions with DJ Sir and DECA, and in line with feedback received, it's also necessary to consider the Portland Yacht Club existing site along with a new location south of the Maritime Discovery Centre as part of this review. The Portland Yacht Club location scored highly in DECA's assessment as 7 out of 10, the Maritime Centre site rated 5 out of 10, and the site adjacent to the TS Henty rated 7.5 out of 10. The Portland Yacht Club location has been agreed to in principle by DECA. No other locations have DECA in principle approval at this stage. And there is an image in the report for people listening and watching where the sites are located. I think it's important just to pause and do a budget summary of our current state and potentially our proposed future state. The total budget for the project is $6.2 million. Council received $5 million from the Regional Infrastructure Fund in 2021, and the council contribution is $1.2 million. Council has already received $4 million in funding, and another $1 million will flow through, subject to project milestones. Since 2021, the project has expended $500,000, covering a range of things, including detailed design costs and costs associated with the first location change back originally. This results in a $5.7 million budget remaining. There is an additional $600,000 required to cover commitments and expected costs over the construction period. And with the 10% contingency built in to cover construction, the project has a budget shortfall of $1.1 million. To continue with the Portland Yacht Club location, the overall budget needs to be increased from 6.2 to 7.3 million, and at this stage, Council has not secured that budget shortfall. In regards to possible future state with the budget, locating and building at the two alternative locations is estimated between 1.8 and 2.3 using the existing building designs. This would vary, or may vary, and increase due to cultural heritage, geotech, engineering and other expert advice. For a totally new or substantially different building design, an additional $400,000 to $600,000 will need to be considered. A new location will increase the initial estimated budget from 6.2 to a range of between 8.2 and 8.9 million. And these costs are estimates only until the investigation is done, and they would need to be indexed annually at 5%. I think now I'll table the report for Council's debate, and myself and Mr Doherty are happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Miller. Councillors, questions? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms Miller, you mentioned scores, so 7, 7.5, 5. What do these scores actually mean with regards to the matter of consent, and what does that actually mean in realistic terms?
I can respond to that, yeah. So thanks, Councillor Martin. Through the Mayor, these were conducted under a desktop assessment by DECA. I can't answer how that criteria is done. It is done on DECA's guidelines, siting design guidelines, and also their policies. What they mean in relevance to their assessment is something that I cannot answer and couldn't answer on behalf of DECA, and what it means in the overall scale.
So from what I understand, these scores mean the likelihood that this building may get built, according to DECA and with regards to the Marine and Coastal Act. Does that guarantee, we haven't put the application in yet, these are any indications, is it guaranteed to actually get through?
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Look, nothing is guaranteed when it comes through. There's a range of assessments, there's a range of policies that DECA will undertake, so they are not guaranteed. We have one in principle support currently, and as for the other two sites that are alternative locations, we don't have those in principles at this moment, and there's a lot more to go through when you do put in those applications, and a bigger process to determine whether it will actually get approval or not.
Because I think it's important that, I mean, councillors know this, but I think it's important the public knows that we're getting an indication from DECA, but we're not actually getting guarantees from DECA. We're still flying blind. Is that a fair assessment?
It's a fair assessment, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Robert McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr Doherty, when you say a desktop assessment from DECA, could a on-site assessment and an application which referred to other indicators that are outlined in their siting and design guidelines change that assessment?
There's a range of things. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. There's a range of things that will determine approval of a MACA consent that are done, a lot of which that I can't speak to, and obviously done themselves by DECA, not just a desktop assessment, and a range of policies that they'll undertake in that process. So yes, they can change, and they can be things along the lines of through detailed design processes, traffic management, facility parking, those types of processes that are determined on there, along with their own siting design guidelines that they'll take into consideration.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Another one, Mr Doherty, if you wouldn't mind. Could you confirm that the major user stakeholder in the Portland Yacht Club is happy to have these three options explored?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Thank you, Councillor McDonald. There was a meeting recently with the Yacht Club, and Site 2 was discussed with them. And prior to this meeting, we've also made contact and advised them of the emergence of Site 7. There's pros and cons for all the sites, I think, for the Yacht Club, so there's not one perfect location. Yeah, that's not a simple, there's a preferred over another. There'd be compromises, at each location.
Councillor Carr, questions through me, please. Not directly to staff.
Madam Mayor, I was just wondering if there was any questions from the community for question times that relate to this matter that would help us in our decision-making process.
There's a general one, Councillor Carr, but it's about asking for a progress report. Okay. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two questions. One is you've referred to, Ms Miller, you've referred to Site 2 and Site 7. In the recommendation, it's B is the Site 2 and C is the Site 7. I just want that clarified for those that are reading the agenda. But more importantly, my questions, you've mentioned to change the design would be $400,000 to $600,000, an estimate. That's fine. But would this need, if we were to change the design, would it need approval from the state government that of the funding bodies, because I believe that we will see certain conditions as to the construction of what type of building we are. So I know the answer to it, but I just want I want to be quite clear for the community that there are certain conditions on that grant funding. Thank you, Ms. Mayor. If you can,
I might let
you
Mr.
can work
Doherty
that out.
Respond to that. He's got a bit more to do with the funding bodies of late. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Through the Mayor, yes, there is certain conditions attributed to the funding agreement on there, to the design of the building, and certain components that are required under that funding agreement to be included in the design. So any redesign would need to be in line with that funding agreement, or if it wasn't, there would need to be conversations with the funding body before we proceed with anything else in that way. But yeah, we do have to meet the conditions of that funding agreement to the design requirements that are in it.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to, if we can,
then Councillor McDonald.
If we can just step back, why are we talking about MACA consent? What's this MACA consent? I mean, surely council can just build a building when it wants to, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Why are we spending so much time on this MACA consent?
Who would like to have a go?
If I start at a high level, and maybe Mr. Doherty can add in.
For those playing at home, because I mean, this is a key thing that we're having to deal with.
So what does MACA mean?
So MACA stands for Marine and Coastal Act, and there's a raft of levers, policies, regulations, etc. that sit under that. across the whole of the Victorian coastline if you wish to construct on the coastline. So it's also modelled on coastal mapping through to 2100, I believe. Yep, 2100. So, but it's not just on sea level rise, it's on a range of other things as well. And as part of the planning process, we need MACA consent, and it is on Crown land or state land as well. So is there anything else, Mr Doherty?
Thank you.
So to build this building, we need to get consent from DECA to be able to do it, correct?
Correct.
From the government, yes.
Correct.
Councillor Robert McDonald.
Mr Doherty, so can you just confirm that either or any one of those three options will require additional funding?
Thanks, Councillor McDonald. Yes, at this stage we are in an active tender process that we're sitting in at the minute for the current location at the yacht club there, and but all of these current sites will require extra funding. It's the levels of that funding and the unknowns that go with them.
Thank you.
Councillor Alistair McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The siting analysis from DECA, when it was suggested to them at a meeting with the councillors a couple of weeks ago, that they hadn't really done a proper assessment on site number 2 or B, and my concern is we've got site A and C, very low sites, and the possibility of inundation from sea level rises is very, very high. So with the MACA document, my concern is that we may not get a tick for those two sites, where site 2 is quite, site B, sorry folks. Site B is much further, it's higher than the other two sites to sea level, and if we had a site inspection with DECA, I'm sure that the siting analysis could change for that site.
So, Ms Miller, can you just confirm for me, I believe we have in principle MACA consent for the existing location at
Correct,
the yacht
Madam
club?
Mayor.
That's
Correct.
right. And that came in at number 7, and I believe that site C, am I correct if I said it came in at 7.5? So we actually do have in principle support for MACA consent on that site, is that correct?
Not on site.
No,
C.
but on the existing
on
site,
existing,
yes.
we do.
So, Councillor McDonald, we do have in principle existing consent for a MACA consent. Oh, sorry, for MACA
But,
consent.
Madam Mayor, in principle doesn't mean anything really.
I think I'm just correcting that you said
We
that we
are
didn't
doing
have it. We
DECA.
do have in principle support, so I'm just correcting that.
Yes.
Are there any further questions, councillors? Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to be a DECA bashing because they have a job to do and they're doing it within their guidelines, so yes, be kind. Madam Mayor, it was mentioned some cost overruns before. When did we initially get this funding, and was it reasonable to expect that we would have to, from when we got it to now, extra money would probably be required? When did we first receive funding?
Through the police deputy fire. Again, this is a project a little bit before my time, but the funding came in 2021.
Yes.
From the Regional Infrastructure Fund, and I don't
Yes.
believe that fund exists any longer. So I can't talk to cost escalations that have been applied to the project. Ms Doherty might be able to add a bit more to that.
Yeah, thanks, Ms Miller. Yeah, there is, you're correct, it was received in 2021 and the project progressed through various stages. Obviously, we went through the design stages on that. There are certain elements there that couldn't have been anticipated, and some that that we could have that are always there that present a risk that haven't presented themselves as well. But yeah, there were some there that couldn't have been anticipated around the modelling and the likes on there within those policies that have come about during this process. So
So
hindsight is one thing in that, but yeah, there are ones that
So that ballpark costing was done roughly 2020, 2021 before COVID, and then we had those, everyone knows we had those years when costs just exploded. So I think it's reasonable to expect there's going to be some sort of cost overruns. And I realise that there's always contingencies built into these projects, but I think as every local government or government organisation is finding right now, Madam Mayor, there's blowouts because of material costs, and I guess that's where we find ourselves here, is we are going to incur cost, but we're obviously looking at what sites we're doing at this stage.
And through the Mayor, Councillor Martin, I'll just add that costs also increased with that location change. So when that occurred, there would have been some cost increase in 2023 as well.
Yes. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Robert McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just interested in the amount of money that council has already spent on the finger wharves that now house the local keel boats and also the visiting cruising yachts. And we've been talking a lot about growth of the town and the community tonight. And if we imagine that growth continuing, would more finger wharves be likely?
Councillor McDonald, can we stay on topic here? We're talking about the foreshore pavilion.
Yes, I'm talking about the relevance of the location of location B, Madam Mayor,
right.
in relation to where those finger wharves are that are housing those yachts. And would that be a consideration for council, considering the heavy use of those wharves for the yachts in relation to a location of a yacht club?
So, Madam Mayor, just could I get a clarity on the question from Councillor McDonald?
What's the actual question, Councillor McDonald?
The question is, in an application that we might put for a MACA consent, would a location relating to current use of existing infrastructure that we've spent a lot of money on be relevant?
We probably have to put that back to the department to understand more about that.
I think we would have to take that one on notice and come back to you with that one.
Thank you, Ms Miller. Councillor Carr.
Right, I can go. Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, October 23, we endorsed we'll call it the Yacht Club, for the sake of the discussion, to go in the location of the existing yacht club. The primary reason we were advised at the time was to achieve MACA consent. What has changed, or how did we end up in a space where we now have two other locations that have that may achieve MACA consent?
Are you able to answer that question? No, that's okay.
I think, look, Jim,
I don't have the answer for it.
no, I think, again, that's one on notice and we would have to come back to you. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say, Councillor Carr, that the department came back to council with further information on looking at other locations, hence why we're back here where we are now.
Madam Mayor, has council received any complaints about the about the proposed building being positioned on the existing Portland Yacht Club site?
Madam Mayor, I guess in broad terms there's been a little bit of stuff in the media about the existing site, which prompted some action within DECA to then go and do the desktop review. So
the answer, the answer is no.
Yeah, some conversations we haven't been privy to, and some we have.
Councillor
Just to clarify, we haven't received a position from the primary stakeholder being the Portland Yacht Club in relation to the three locations that have been tabled tonight.
I don't believe so, Councillor Carr.
No, through the chair, no, Councillor Carr. They've had a conversation, I think I may have already said this, prior to the councillor briefing, and then they were given advice of the report tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Northcote.
Madam Mayor, I just wonder about meeting procedure, and the monitors are here tonight. I'm going to speak against the motion, but the motion hasn't been put, has
That's
it?
fine.
So,
That's fine. No, it hasn't been
or
put.
moved or seconded, so...
We are going to wrap up
And
questions in a moment, Councillor
Yes,
Northcote.
I'd like the opportunity to speak, but I'll be speaking against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ron McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could we just confirm whether the community feedback that's referred to in the report, 44% didn't want that building in that location, 33% didn't want that design. Is that correct? Do we consider that feedback from, in relation to your question?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Didn't want, yeah. So
Didn't
that
want
means the
anything,
majority
33%
did.
didn't want anything at all.
Yeah.
The directive from the department after our community consultation that it had to be at the yacht club site overrode the community consultation outcome. So yes, we did receive community feedback, but the directive from the government at the time about the site had to be the yacht club site overrode that community consultation. Councillor Carr, did you have another question? I am going to wrap up the question.
Thanks, Madam Mayor.
We must be nearly
Can
ready.
council afford to delay this project?
Sorry, I can't hear you, Councillor Carr.
Can council afford to delay this project and find the resources or revenue to fund the predicted increase? Has that assessment been done?
Or did you want to try and answer that?
Yeah, Mr Hole may like to respond to that.
Mayor, if I may, so in response to Councillor Carr's question, the report and the discussion tonight sort of outlines a number of potential cost increases. They are not simply not known. So it would be inappropriate to say whether council can fund. We would need to know how much we need to fund and over what period of time in order to provide an appropriate response to that query.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, the part of the back of consent is an increase in green space and this two-storey building. Why are we, so my question would be, why are we looking at a two-storey building, not a single-storey building?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Martin. Again, it's another one with DECA and their siting and design guidelines and their policies that they put to us when applying for consent to construct on their lands. And that's where the retention of green space or achieving as much green space in return for projects that we construct are a big part of their marine and coastal consent processes. With that as well, obviously the requirements I mentioned earlier on, within the funding agreement, there are requirements for certain elements to be constructed within this building, and that there is a process of, and it actually states in the funding agreement as well that it is listed as a two-storey building within the funding agreement with other elements contained within there. So it's not just a green space component with the two-storey building, there is the part there on the funding agreement as well.
Yeah. Okay. Councillors, are we nearly ready to final questions? Councillor Alistair.
Question, Madam Mayor. What does DECA define as green space? Is it grass or is it just green field?
Open space.
Open space.
Open space. Okay. Councillor Carr.
What impact would it be if we delayed this decision by 4 weeks to get feedback from the primary stakeholder?
We've got through the chair and Mr Doherty, step in please. We've got a live tender process, so those tenders will expire, so we have that to consider. Also going into caretaker, we've got some considerations there. We probably need a decision so the team can move forward. We've got an existing resolution sitting there now to proceed with the tender process, delays are costing the project. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr Doherty?
No, thanks, Ms Miller. Probably to reiterate, the live tender that is there and that those prices there are held only for a certain amount of time.
Absolutely.
So there are known factors there that we are working with, which is great to have that process progressing. However, after that date, I guess within a live tender, you'll be working into unknowns.
Thank you.
And material prices can fluctuate, as we know, so can other things, so it's just an increased risk.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, can I add one more
Yes,
thing?
Ms.
There
Miller.
are 3 key stakeholders in this project as well, being the Angling Club, the cable trams and
Yes.
the yacht club.
There's a number.
Sorry, the sport and rec fishing group, isn't it?
Yes, sport and rec fishing, yeah.
Yeah,
England's
club
got 2 of
does
those
exist.
groups, isn't
The, I suppose, the recommendation though is to halt the tender. Yeah, okay. Even though, I'll clarify, and that's,
And the sooner we undertake some evaluation, Councillor Carr, as soon as we find a way forward. We need to give a clear directive to the staff on what council intends to do. Councillors, if there's no further question, there's a recommendation there tabled on page 34. Councillor Robin
Thank
McDonald.
you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in its entirety.
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
It's been moved by Councillor Alistair McDonald and second by, it's been moved by Councillor Robin McDonald and second by Councillor Alistair McDonald. Councillor Robin, did you want to
Thank
make
you,
a
Madam
comment?
Mayor. I'd just like to point out that this building is an intergenerational building. It's going to be here for the next few generations. It's our responsibility to get this right. The fact that it is going to cost additional funds to what the council has allocated means that we do need to find some additional funding anyway. So to pursue some further research into getting this result right for all the major stakeholders, and from feedback as a councillor from the community to me has essentially been about the height of the building in terms of blocking the views, which is also cited in the siting and design guidelines, the document from 2020, that the footprint is important. The consolidation of the 2 buildings that we would be pulling down allows us to consolidate that footprint, preferably minimising it where we can, but also that height is a very important component of those siting and design guidelines, and one which I think we owe the community to consider in terms of losing the view that we have over this beautiful harbour.
Thank you, Councillor Robin. Councillor Alistair, do you have
Yeah, Madam Mayor, thank you. I'd just like to say that this is a great opportunity for this council to relook at the project and try and get it right, because it will be an iconic building on our foreshore, and we really need to get it right. The scope and the usage of the building has already changed. We don't need a fish market selling centre, and that would be less space that's required, and I'm sure we could build a very, 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 very nice building on our foreshore that would the community would appreciate, and it would fit nicely, and I don't think we need a 2-storey building on the foreshore.
Let's see.
So, and I really encourage my fellow councillors to take this opportunity to go by the recommendations, and let's have another look at it, and let's get it right for the community.
Councillor Northcote, did you want to speak
Madam Mayor,
against
thank
it?
you for the opportunity to speak, and it's been a hell of a lot of work go into this, and staff have got as big a stake in it as the councillors, really, in a way, because it's a very difficult situation. It seems to me, Madam Mayor, that it's not very often projects run when local government run on time and on budget, and if there's about a $3 to $4 million overrun, well, it's got to be the ratepayers that will be picking up the can. And Madam Mayor, you represent, well, I understand we all represent the Shire, but the people that are talking to me about budget overruns, the people are going to have to stump up the $2 million to, or whatever it may well be, to complete the project, if indeed it goes ahead, because there's so many issues, as everyone's heard tonight, and there's just so many things that we've got to jump over to get even turn aside. And I'd have to say, I don't know, but Steve Garner from Committee for Portland, quote on the Portland Observer today, is spot on with the way I'm thinking anyway. You know, there's a fair whack of the people, as we've heard, of yachties and whatever, are still not in agreement, so there's no guarantee at all that they're going to be agreeing or changing their mind unless there's some, you know, significant things happening. If there is an option, if the money's got to go back or we can hang on to the money, surely we could find another project within the Shire to use that to auspice something else.
I don't believe that's an option, Councillor
Thanks,
Northcote.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd just like to foreshadow a motion. I don't know what it is yet, but look, I have concerns about adding the location close to TS Henty and the existing yacht club location went out to public consultation, and we've got feedback from the community in relation to their preferences in relation to those two spots. Adding another location up at the Maritime Discovery Centre of a building facing south would extend this project by 12 months, and we'd go back out to community consultation, which I don't particularly agree with at this point in time, but my foreshadowed motion would be to remove B from item 2.
Madam Mayor, so there is a motion on the table.
That's right, there's a motion on the
table.
table.
I haven't
Dealt with.
but I'm allowed to foreshadow.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. If there's no further comment, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a bit puzzled as to why Councillor Carr is not moving an amendment if he's because there's no use having a foreshadowed motion when an amendment would be the appropriate way to because it's just slightly altering. And I would second the amendment if Councillor Carr was to move it.
Councillor Carr.
I'm happy to, I'm happy to move
Are you
an
happy?
amendment, and the only amendment would be to dot point 2, that B, new location south of Maritime Discovery Centre be removed, which means that it would bring the project forward by 12 months, I believe.
That amendment will need to be supported by the mover.
Yep.
You got a second?
It's. Do we have a seconder for the amendment?
Yeah, second.
And we need the mover to support the amendment of the original motion. Is that correct? That's right, isn't it? That's the process. Do we have the support of the mover of the original motion to support the amendment?
Do you agree?
Do you agree to support the amendment? No.
No.
Okay.
The amendment is lost.
Okay, the amendment is lost.
Sorry.
Put it to the vote.
I haven't.
Hang on.
Councillors haven't spoken to the amendment
Can I just?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
For amendment to get to the next step, it would need approval of the original mover.
I'm just going to ask Mr. Hole to give some governance support here, please. Just bear with us.
No. Marcus gets voted first. And then it's whether it's lost or carried. If it's lost, then it goes back to the original motion. Yeah. And you get the rights to speak to it. Right. Against it. So it's given to still includes options, right?
I only look at these out.
This is the process it's going to go through. So Gilbert's right.
Go through your question, we'll go to yours. And then if it gets up, it's it. If it doesn't, go back to the original.
Sorry, Carl.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
They'll work it out.
Madam Mayor? We're up to section 5. So if the councillor proposes an amendment to which either the mover or seconder does not agree, the following will apply. The amendment must be moved and seconded, which has actually happened.
Yes.
Councillor may speak on any amendment once, whether or not they have spoken to the motion, but debate must be confined to the terms of the amendment.
Exactly. I'm happy to speak.
So every councillor has the opportunity to speak to the amendment.
Yep.
So, right.
And then the amendment will be put to the vote.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. Sorry, I apologise, councillors. I was getting confused as to why the mover of the original motion had to agree with the amendment. I'm sorry. Thank you. Are we clear on this? The amendment is specifically in relation to item number 2, which removes 2B, the new location south of the Maritime Discovery Centre. That was moved by, the amendment was moved by Councillor Carr and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Councillor Carr, would you like to speak to that amendment?
Point of order, Madam
Sorry,
Mayor.
Mr. Councillor Wilson.
Can I just have clarity?
Yes.
The amendment is items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's correct.
With item 2 is
Removing
A and,
B.
and C are the B and just 2 locations.
The recommendation
So the recommendation's five points. Thank
remains in its entirety. The only change is in item 2 to remove 2B, the new location south of the Maritime Discovery Centre. But the rest of the recommendation remains the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, did you wish?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, on page 38, option 3 was one of the options presented to Council, which was halt the tender process and undertake further stakeholder engagement and assessment of the new location at TS Henty, which is what the amendment's trying to do. DECA have given that location a 7.5 initial rating for market consent, which is higher than the existing location for the Portland Yacht Club. The community feedback when we first went out 24 months ago was that their preferred location was to have the 2-storey building in behind the cliff at that particular spot. We also have feedback from the primary stakeholder, being the Portland Yacht Club, that that location would work for them. And I believe that it also would avoid going out to a further 12 months of community consultation in relation to that location, which would reduce the overall budget creep for this project, hence the amendment as to
Must be confined to the terms of the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Does anybody else wish to speak to the amendment? Now, the discussion must be confined to the amendment. Thank you, Councillor Robin McDonald.
So I'd just like to speak to the removal of that B option. It is my understanding that many years ago, at the very, very start of this whole project, that was the preferred site by the yacht club. There was a suggestion that the site wasn't big enough, so they assumed that it was off the table. And now that they've realised that it's on the table, I believe they're very much interested in looking at that, particularly because of its location next to the wharves where all the yachts are. So I think if we're going to do this and we're going to do this properly, let's look at all the options on the table, please.
Thank you. Councillor Martin, did you wish to make a comment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's
just in relation to the amendment?
Yes, correct. I think it's important to understand what the confusion is here, what we're really looking at voting on, and that is that removal of Part B which is taking away an area to be looked at. The reason being, I think Councillor Carr's mentioned time, and that's a valid reason. If we do have another location in there, it is going to require some more time to do it. Councillor McDonald has mentioned that we need to have all options on the table to consider. But obviously some of the hesitation, Madam Mayor, is there is additional cost to look at location B. And that is why we're sitting here debating this issue, is do we want to incur a little bit more costs to have more options on the table? I can't speak to what the yacht club may or may not like, but it comes down to, are we happy with a little bit more cost to have more options available? And that is what we're here debating, that's what we're here talking about, and that's what I want to hear, Madam Mayor, because I'm open to suggestions from those councillors that are debating that either way.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no money tree, so we can't expect to be just throwing money at a project because we want some. So the concern I have is a concern that's across the community, is the increasing cost that this project is going to impinge on our ratepayers. Now, the MDC siting, it's
The Maritime Discovery Centre.
That's it. I'm only on a 2-minute clock, Madam
That's
Mayor,
fine.
so I was
Continue.
trying to cut.
Continue.
That site is reclaimed land. Therefore, there's going to need significant foundations, which adds to the cost of the proposed building. The design will need to be structured differently from the other two sites. So this site is not having this site will incur, as Councillor Carr says, more finance. It'll take longer to get through, and I believe that the decision to way back in the old days to get rid of the angling club and the yacht club and amalgam into one building. Sure, it was located at the MDC, but I think the better siting may be where they are, or further onto Handy Beach. So financially, I am supporting the amendment for just let's look at 2 sites, not 3.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Carr, would you like to close the debate? Oh.
Madam Mayor, Councillor Wilson's saying that's going to cost more to relocate to Site B. Then he says Site C is going to cost more money. It could be an option, but it's still going to cost the same amount of money to do the geotechs and everything. So what's the difference between B and C? You're pulling B out, but why don't you pull C out?
Okay,
That's
Councillor.
my argument against that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Alistair. Councillor Carr, would you like to close the debate?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The difference is the schedule. We go back out for 12 months, and the CPI increases for going back out to community consultation. And the advice given is that we have some geotechnical information for the location closest to TS Henty and the existing yacht club, and we have no geotechnical information for the location next to the Maritime Discovery Centre. Look, it's just important. We have been to the community, Madam Mayor. We have been to the community around those locations. I know it was a little bit further north, but the advice is that we could proceed in either of those locations. I'm interested in the primary stakeholders' feedback, who said that originally they preferred the location on Henty Beach. and I think that's the way to go forward. We need to get this done. The more we delay it, the more it's going to cost us, and we still don't have an answer as to whether we can afford it.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. I'll make it clear, councillors, you're clear of the amendment. The recommendation as tabled on page 34 remains the same. Items 1 through to 5. Number 2, the amendment removes option B, the new location south of the Maritime Centre. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour of the amended motion? Those against? Okay, it's lost. Okay. Oh, I was for the amendment. Do you want a division?
No, it's fine, Madam Mayor.
Okay, it's lost. Okay, so councillors, we will now put the motion as tabled. Those in favour? Those against? Councillors, would you like a division, Councillor Northcote?
I would, Madam Mayor. I'd like to...
That's fine. That's fine. I call a division. Those in favour of the recommendation as tabled on page 34. That's fine, Councillor Northcote. Those against? Yep, stand up.
I'm against it.
That's fine. Up you get.
That's the message I'm trying to get through.
That's fine. That's fine. The motion is carried, councillors. Thank you.
It's more money. It just costs us more money.
Long way to go yet.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go. Councillors, urgent business. There's no urgent business on tonight's agenda, I'm assuming. I think we've taken that. Councillors, we do have a couple of questions. I'll take questions that have been taken on notice. Thank you to Mr Matthew Jarlett of Portland for the following questions. In light of the recent events reported in the Portland Observer on the 19th of July, is Council reviewing the opening hours of the public amenity rooms in Henty Street to better serve the needs of the public? Mr Jarlett, Council has reviewed the opening times for the public amenities on a number of occasions. We continue to balance the needs of the community, of the travelling public, along with the challenging and inappropriate behaviour from a small number of people. We are disappointed with the actions of the one person that was reported in the local paper this week. There is no intention to change the opening hours as a result of one person's actions. Council is proposing to replace those amenities, and the upgrade design will provide an option for longer opening hours while limiting antisocial behaviour. I can also say, Mr Jarlett, just in the last 24 hours, we've had more damage and vandalism to that particular amenity block. It's really, really challenging for this council at that particular location. Your second question, Mr Jarlett, you have asked about the multi-purpose centre and the pavilion. I hope that tonight's discussion has probably answered all of those questions and you don't need me to refer to that question any longer. Thank you. I'll refer to your third question. With satisfaction of this council's overall performance continue to drop from last year's disappointing result, what concrete measures will be taken between now and the next council election in October this year to improve the public view of council? You're right, Mr Jarlett, council is disappointed with the overall result and we certainly take ownership of that. It's important to note that the customer service in our waste service is rated really high in the survey, and the surveys were undertaken earlier this year, and Council has imposed a number of new remedies to provide information to the public through our newsletter and a number of different forums. We also, of course, have the appointment of our new CEO who starts next week, and we're looking forward to the leadership within the organisation and some stability now in having a new CEO for the next 5 years. So we welcome that confidence back into the community. Thank you for your questions. Members of the community, we do have a couple of confidential reports to consider, so we will be closing the meeting. Can I have the recommendation from the floor, please?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Carr, second. Those in favour? Thank you.
Sorry?
Thank you. Councillor Wilson, Carr. Is the CEO staying?